But what is delegation of authority by the legislature? Under the constitutional separation of powers doctrine, which we have in the California Constitution in Article 3, Section 3, generally the laws are enacted by the legislative branch of government. The laws are administered by the executive branch of government, and the laws are interpreted by the judicial branch of government. With the executive branch charged with administering the law as well as enforcing it, state agencies and departments that administer the law need to engage in rulemaking activities. We call these their quasi-legislative as opposed to quasi-judicial activities. In delegating authority to the executive branch of government, a question that is sometimes posed is whether legislatures can be expected to adopt statutes that address every detail of public policy. In some instances, they can, but in most others, they cannot. As a result, there's expected to be some delegation of lawmaking power to the executive branch at either the federal or state levels of government. Issues can be raised, however, regarding which powers can be delegated to the executive branch, to which agencies or departments, as well as the extent to which that delegation can take place without running afoul of the constitutional separation of powers doctrine. So the question occasionally arises, how broadly can the legislature delegate authority to these executive branch agencies and departments? Generally, when this authority is delegated to state agencies, the legislature will articulate guidance in the use of that authority by the state agency. To do otherwise would be basically an improper delegation of legislative power. And there are quite a few, both state and of course federal appellate court decisions in this area of constitutional law. In general, an unconstitutional delegation of authority occurs when the legislature either leaves the resolution of fundamental policy issues to others, or the legislature fails to provide adequate direction for the implementation of their policy. You could review some appellate court decisions, such as Carson Mobile Home Park Owners Association versus the City of Carson, a 1983 California appellate court decision. In that case, the appellate court explained that an unconstitutional delegation of power occurs when the legislature confers upon an administrative agency the unrestricted authority to make fundamental policy determinations. To avoid such a delegation, the legislature must provide an adequate yardstick for the guidance of the administrative body empowered to execute the law. Also, they went on to say that underlying these rules is the belief that the legislature, as the most representative organ of government, should settle insofar as possible controverted issues of policy, and that it must determine crucial issues whenever it has the time, information, and competence to deal with them. Other appellate court cases have made similar determinations. The California Supreme Court back in 1974 articulated similar points in Clean Air Constituency versus the State Air Resources Board. Another interesting example is in the Court of Appeal decision from 1993, California Radioactive Materials versus the Department of Health Services, in which the parties litigated an order for formal adjudicatory proceedings to determine whether that order was the result of unlawful coercion by members of the Senate Rules Committee during confirmation hearings of senior officials to head the Health and Welfare Agency at the time. The Senate Rules Committee admitted that it obtained an agreement for further administrative proceedings from those appointees during their confirmation process. The legislators characterized the agreement as a legally proper compromise between two branches of state government. On the other hand, the appellate court concluded that the Senate Rules Committee's interference in the administration of the law was unconstitutional, and that their purported agreement with these administrative officials was void. The appellate court explained that formal adjudicatory hearings are not otherwise required by law, and so this voided agreement was the only basis upon which the agency intended to conduct further proceedings. So in the end, the fundamental issue that the courts look at is how much authority can be delegated to the agencies in the executive branch by the legislative branch of state government. And it appears that the more that authority is delegated, the more likely it might be deemed unlawful. So, of course, the legislature needs to remain vigilant in its delegation of lawmaking power.